Oh my God. It is so cold. What if I just started titling these videos, Lindsay bitches about the winter for 3 months straight? I hate the winter so much. I can't even explain to you guys. But listen, okay, so I got a bunch of comments after my last video, and I know the lighting's atrocious. Like, this is like morning sun. I don't know what to tell you, but I got a bunch of comments in my last video after I said that it was like 30 degrees or 20 degrees or something, of people in Canada being like, honey, it's -42. And I see you, I feel you. That is my idea of an absolute nightmare. But it was -5 when I brought my son to school this morning. I'm not built for -5. None of this is built for -5. Disgusting. Disgusting. Anyways. Hey guys, we are back with another one. And in the biggest, warmest oodie ever. By the way, not to like start out with an immediate book, but if you are ever interested in getting one of these giant, oversized, Sherpa-lined oodies that have literally been my lifeline this winter, the link is always in the description down below, or you could use the code SheIsBookedAndBusy15 at checkout to get 15% off, and I do make a small commission on that. So if you're interested in supporting my channel, you know, please go ahead and do it. Plus, you're getting the biggest, comfiest, warmest hoodie that has literally ever existed. I don't even remember what it was like to read before I found a bunch of hoodies, because I put these things on, put my hood up, get all comfy. I can actually, they're so big and oversized that I can actually like suck my legs up into them. And I love doing that. Put on a pair of big comfy socks and you are in like a Sherpa warm cocoon. And when it is -5 out, there's really no other way. I segue. I digress. Not to start out this video before I've even told you what we're doing with me shouting out my hoodies, but I'm literally obsessed with them, and my 2 boys and I live in them. So haven't successfully gotten Eric, my husband, to try one out yet. They're kind of not his thing, but Dylan, Cole, and I live in them. Okay, so enough about raving about the oodie nonsense. Let's talk about what we want to do this week. So as I've talked about in my last couple of videos, and if you watched my most recent TBR, Spin Wheel TBR, I have a 21 book TBR this month, which is insanity because the most books I've ever read in a month was 15, and it was in December, and that was like insanity for me. So the chances of me getting to 21 are literally non-existent. Like, it's not gonna happen, okay? Today is like the 21st, I think, and I have read 6 books up until this date, plus I'm about 39% of the way through Strange the Dreamer. So I should finish this. So I've read like 6.5 books in 21 days. So the chances of me getting to 21 are literally non-existent. I would have had to read 1 book a day up to this point, you know, plus I have a couple more days left. So I'm trying not to pressure myself, but that's not even really the point. The bigger point, besides for the number of books I have, is that I really liked a majority of my TBR this month. And I feel like by not prioritizing my TBR, I'm like wasting the opportunity to read these fantastic books because my TBR is aggressively great this month. So I want to prioritize them. I did a challenge last week that was really successful, but I think this week I want to allow myself to just kind of mood read. So what I was thinking we could do is do like a realistic week in the life. Like, let's see how many books I can read realistically every day. And I'm going to tell you right now, some days I'll go crazy. I feel like last week I read a 500-page book in one day. But then after I do that, I feel like I burn myself out, and I might go like a day or 2 reading absolutely nothing. Or if our schedule gets crazy, I might have a couple of days where I'm reading, you know, 10, 15 pages at a time. And then I'm able to sit down on the 3rd day and bang out an entire book in one day. So my reading is very erratic, and I just kind of want to track what I do this week. We are deep into basketball season. My youngest son plays baseball year round. I have literally 7 days a week of sports for the most part. So I'm kind of reading on the run. Let's see what I get to this week. However, I'm kind of finishing Strange the Dreamer as I go. But if you have read Laini Taylor, my 3 girls and I, Kaylani, Dana, and Karina, are going and reading through her entire works. We're reading like 1 or 2 books a month. I think we did. I don't remember what, it was the first month. We read her first book and then the little graphic novella. that came with it. So we're reading mostly one book a month. And if you have read any Laini Taylor, I think you'll understand what I'm saying, because although I appreciate the lyrical and descriptive way that she writes, it is very, very wordy writing. And if you've watched me at all, you know that that's not my preferred writing style. I am a very fast-paced, like efficiency matters, straight to the facts kind of person. Even when you're like working with me in my other job or when you're talking to me, I just don't believe in taking 15 minutes to say something that you could say in under 5. So I kind of feel that way with my writing as well. And the one thing about Laini Taylor is she's going to take that 15 minutes, babe. Okay. You're not just going to hear, oh, she's wearing a blue gown with crystals. You're going to hear the exact fabric, the exact number of crystals, the way that they shine in the moonlight. And although it's very descriptive, and I really appreciate how talented she is as a writer, and you can tell that she really pictures this in your head, and her goal is to give you every single minute detail and talk about the way it makes 27 different characters feel when they look at her. It's just, it gets a bit tedious to me, and it gets to be a little bit of a slog to get through. But it's weird because I appreciate the overall story and I'm interested in the overall story. And maybe it's because I'm interested so much in the overall story that this overly descriptive writing almost gets irritating to me, because I'm so invested in the action and the plot that I'm like, why have we been talking about a dress for 4 pages? Like, get back to the story. Like, I want to know what's going on. Like, I'm so invested in the adventure this character is on, or the conversation this character was in the middle of. I don't want to talk about lunch for half a chapter. So it's like a blessing and a curse, kind of. But like I said, I am 209 pages in. We're going to make some progress in this for sure. However, I also want to pick up another book that I'm not reading as like a buddy read. And the last 4 books I've read have been fantasy romances. And I did just pick up Miss Iron Storm. And every part of my body is screaming to read this. However, because the last 4 books I read were fantasy romances, I am kind of feeling a little tiny burnout in my brain happening with fantasy romance. So I think we're actually going to save this, because I don't want this book affected by my minor burnout. And this might push me over the edge. So I really want to give this the attention it deserves when I go into it. So I think we might need a little bit of a genre shift really quickly before we go into this. I think I'm going to pick up one of the other books on my TBR that aren't necessarily fantasy romance. So let me grab them and we can decide what we're going into before we pick up Onyx Storm. Okay, so we actually had way more options than I thought we did that weren't straight fantasy romance. So let's talk about each one really quick. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different options that we could do. So the first one I grabbed is Beautiful Disaster by Jamie McGuire. I think this is more of like a dark, emotional romance about a good girl drawn to a very bad boy. It says that our main female character, Abby, is kind of attracted to our bad boy character, Travis. But intrigued by Abby's resistance to his appeal, Travis tricks her into his daily life with a simple bet. If he loses, he must remain abstinent for a month. If Abby loses, she must live in Travis's apartment for the same amount of time. Either way, Travis has no idea that he has met his match. Okay, so like a tricky bad boy, good girl romance. And I'm pretty sure each of our characters in this book have lived like a pretty tough life, so I'm pretty sure it's like a dark, emotional romance. I could also pick up a book I've wanted to get into for a while, and that's The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. This is like a dreamland, Disney World type, like inheritance romance. And from what I understand, I think the main male character in this book is a bit like broody and masshole, like manhole-ish. I've heard he's like the least favorite in the series, I think, because he's just kind of like toxic and rude, but I'm intrigued. I could also go into The One by John Mars. This is like a dating mystery thriller. A simple DNA test is all it takes, just a quick mouth swab, and soon you'll be matched with your perfect partner, the one you're genetically made for. That's the promise made by Match Your DNA. A decade ago, the company announced that they had found the gene that pairs each of us with our soulmate. Since then, millions of people around the world have been matched, but the discovery has its downsides. Test results have led to the breakup of countless relationships and upended the traditional ideas of dating, romance, and love. Now, 5 very different people have received the notification notification that they've been matched. They're each about to meet their one true love, but happily ever after isn't guaranteed for everyone because even soulmates have secrets and some are more shocking than others. So a little like genetic matchmaking mystery thriller. I've heard really good things about this, and I think it will read pretty quickly. I could also go into the Cinnamon Bun bookstore. Last month in December, I read the Pumpkin Spice Latte Cafe. Isn't that what it's called? Pumpkin Spice Cafe? Pumpkin Spice Cafe. And I did really enjoy it. It is quick. It is cozy. It's very like Stars Hollow, Gilmore's Girls inspired, but spicy, which I'm loving. If you know me, I love Gilmore Girls and I love spice. So this could be a good option. And last but not least, I could go into one of the wild cards for this month's TBR that like I kind of thought about vetoing, but my husband picked it blindly. He picked it randomly at random. So I didn't veto it. And that's Bad Summer People by Emma Rosenblum. Like I said in my TBR, would I have necessarily prioritized like a summer Nantucket-ish? I think this is on Nantucket. Salcombe Fire Island. Whatever, a Fire Island summer mystery. Probably not in January, but it is so short. It's literally like under 250 pages. So I figured it wasn't quite worth a veto. So the question is, am I feeling romance or am I feeling mystery thriller? Part of me wants to kind of choose this just to like get this off of my shelves and get this off of my TBR. Because honestly, I could finish this in a day, probably no problem, depending on how invested I am in it. But summer book in January when it's -5 out. Okay, so looking at all our options, I'm kind of feeling all of these in different ways. Okay, although I want to read the Cinnamon Bun bookstore, I'm kind of not in the mood for super cozy right now. So I think I'm going to eliminate the Cinnamon Bun bookstore. Okay, so I have the fine print, Beautiful Disaster and Bad Summer People. I don't know why, but for some reason, the fine print is just like staring at me and looking really good right now. I think it's because I have a subscriber who's currently in Disney World right now and she keeps sending me like updates and I'm so jealous. I'm so happy for her, but I'm so jealous. I miss Disney so badly. This is actually, I'm a Disney adult and well, I can't even say I'm a Disney adult because I bring my kids. So does that count? But I am a Disney adult. And this is the longest I've actually gone without going to Disney in like years. We were there at the end of October into November of last year, 2023. So a little over a year ago. And this is the longest I've gone. Like we usually go once or twice a year, but we're just holding out for the new renovations to be done at Disney, but also Epic Universe to be done at Universal. So I think we're just like vacationing around here and like cruising instead of Disney and Universal for a bit until we get back. We're thinking like 2027, 2028, somewhere in that arena when the new parks are open, but they've also calmed down. I have no desire to go on their opening year. So I think maybe the fine print and reading about Dreamland will like scratch that Disney itch for me. So I think the first book we're going to go into for our mood reading is The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. It is the next day, different day, same horrible lighting coming through this window. Is that a little better? I don't know if I stand in front of it, whatever. Does not matter. Does not change the point of the story. I should probably go and move the camera into the guest room. We might do that after, but this window takes like direct sunlight in the morning and it is so bright, but that's okay. We got a little backlighting going on. Today's coffee is a vanilla toffee latte with caramel and it's delicious. Let's put our hair up and get to business. So yesterday was a massive success. I did finish Strange the Dreamer. I'm trying to think if we should do my thoughts now because we do have a live going up on Saturday. I'm going to be live with my 3 girlies discussing this book, but this should go up after that. So I think I'm safe to discuss. I don't think any of this is going to be like groundbreaking. I gave this a 2.25 stars. So if you haven't been following along with what Dana, Karina, Kaylani, and I have been doing, we have been reading Laini Taylor's complete works. So Laini Taylor wrote the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series, which also has like a little graphic novella attached to it. And then Strange the Dreamer is the first book in her Strange the Dreamer duology. It's followed up by Muse of Nightmares, which we will be reading next month. And that will complete Laini Taylor's complete works. I think I really did enjoy Daughter of Smoke and Bones, which was the first book in that trilogy. And I liked Night of Cake and Nightmares, which was the graphic novella that went along with it. I think those were the ones that were like over 4 stars for me. There might be an argument for me liking the graphic novella more than I actually liked the actual novel. But after that, the second book and the third book in that trilogy, and then this book have all I've had the same thoughts on them. And what I realized as I'm reading through Laini Taylor is I just don't think her writing style is necessarily for me. I can appreciate the intense amount of talent and mastery of the English language that Laini Taylor has, and I can appreciate and admire the amount of work and effort that her books take, but it's the writing style that honestly it not only doesn't grab me, it just frustrates me as a reader. And I have to think of this in the most graceful way possible, because I don't mean any of this to come across as diminishing. It's all just my personal opinion. And I acknowledge that she is an incredibly talented writer. The lady can write, okay? It's just not for me. So I think the easiest way to talk about her writing style would be just to describe it first and then talk about what exactly doesn't mesh for me. So Laini Taylor's writing is incredibly descriptive, and it's repetitively descriptive, meaning if she describes a character, she's going to describe them every 2 or 3 times they're mentioned throughout the entire book. And these are chunky books. This was 532 pages, which is long. And actually, the writing, you're probably not going to be able to see this. Let me see if I could get my face out of the way. The writing in this book is really tiny. So it's 532 pages of tiny writing. I bet on my Kindle this would probably be closer to 700 pages. So these are chunky books. And every single time a character enters the page, you're going to get a 3 or 4 paragraph description of them. And sometimes it's the same description as you've already read multiple times. She does it for characters. She does it for books. She does it for the world. She does it for situations. She does it for thoughts. So it's incredibly wordy. It's a very wordy style of writing. And some people would call it flowery, lush, but really all those words is poetic where it doesn't need to be poetic, and descriptive where it doesn't need to be descriptive. And if that's your writing, if you love if that's your reading style, I should say, if you love a super wordy, super descriptive, you're going to get a 5-page paragraph to describe every room that this girl walks into over 500 pages, maybe you'll disagree with me and this will be for you. However, for me, this style of writing gets incredibly frustrating because, and this is going to seem strange, but I hope I can make it make sense. I'm actually super interested in her storylines. It's not the storyline that falls apart for me. She writes incredibly interesting, celestial, heavenly, almost touching on religious topics slightly. Daughter of Smoke and Bones and Strange the Dreamer all have a god, heaven versus mortal, angels and devils, archangels, fallen archangels element to it. And I'm super interested in the storyline and the way that she writes. She clearly knows what she's doing, and her plot lines are so interesting. However, because it gets overly descriptive, I actually find myself just very, very irritated because I'm so interested in the plot line and I'm so interested in her character development, and I want to know more about the story and I want to know more about the characters. But I feel that her over description actually keeps taking me out of the information that I want. So for example, I'll be really interested into learning more about our main male character, Laszlo. And I'll be so intrigued by a couple of pages that I read about him. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I want to know more about his backstory. I want to know more about why he's working in this as a scholar in this library. But then instead of peppering in information about him over the story or giving us a glimpse into his backstory, she diverts into 3 pages of talking about his shirt or 3 pages about talking about the section of the library that he's in. And I'm like, ma'am, I was interested. You were taking me down a road and you just diverted to something else. Can we get back to talking about him? And she does it in so many different ways. And I feel like I'm ranting and not making sense, but so you'll be in the middle of like a really interesting like dialogue. Two characters are having a really interesting conversation that you really think is going to further the plot and get you to a point that you're interested in. And then she just like veers to talking about a bird that he saw for 4 pages. And you're like, do I need to know about this bird? Can we go back to the conversation that was actually interesting me? Like, I want to be over here, and she keeps putting you over here. And throughout reading the book, I'm constantly just like, this is information that I don't need to know at the expense of stuff that was interesting me. If she just cut 200 pages out of this book, made it a standard 350-page fantasy, and she honed in on important information, I would have been sold. It would have had me, because the story in and of itself is so interesting. We follow our main male character, Laszlo, who is an orphan, and he works as a scholar in this like library kind of like academic setting. And he also has dreamed about this other ethereal world. So every time he goes to sleep, he dreams about this world that he calls Weep. And it's ethereal and perfect and has the most beautiful lush plants, and you're happy when you're there. And it's kind of been his mission to discover if this land that he's dreaming of is real. And it's actually been his mission to eventually get there. Now, in the meantime, while he's been working in this library, he's also like written out these books and stories and myths, and he's figured out this like alchemical property to harness your spirit and use it to create things that can help you in the world. And I think honestly, he was trying to look for this to get to Weep, or to help him get there. And then we have Nero, who is another character who is the godson of the ruler of this land. Nero also happens to be an alchemist, and I think the ruler of this land, who is his godmother, has invested a lot of money and energy into ensuring that Nero is the greatest alchemist of their time and of their kingdom, but he's just kind of not. He's kind of an unimpressive alchemist. And long story short, Nero discovers that Laszlo has made this alchemical discovery and decides he is going to take it and write it off and pass it off as his own idea. So then on the converse side of the story, we have our main female character, Sarai. She is the daughter of a god, and she is living in the celestial world that Laszlo calls Weep. So we get her side of the story, that Weep is real. She lives there. I think she calls it the Citadel. I'm pretty sure she has a different name for it, because obviously like Weep is the name that Laszlo has created for the land. And long story short, there ends up being this battle between the gods and the humans, and Laszlo and Sarai meet up. The story is very cool. It's very complicated, but it is rife with characters you do not need to know about, descriptions you don't need to know about, rooms and outfits and lands that you don't need to know about. And it actually pulled me out of the story, and it just wasn't for me. I just think that through reading these works, I've really honed in on what my style is and what it isn't. And Laini Taylor's writing style is just not for me. I am going to continue and finish our read along. We only have Muse of Nightmares left, and that's next month. So I'm going to finish it, but Daughter of Smoke and Bone and Night of Cake and Puppets was kind of like the pinnacle of her work for me. Okay, but enough of that long rant to tell you that I didn't really care for the book. Yesterday, let's talk about our writing. It was actually Wednesday the 22nd. I think I got the date wrong yesterday because I never have any clue what day it is. But it was Wednesday the 22nd. I started Strange the Dreamer on page 209 and I ended on 532, which means I read 323 pages of Strange the Dreamer, which was a really good day. I finished the book and that was my goal because we have our live on Saturday. And today is Thursday. So then I ended up picking up the fine print on my Kindle, just kind of while I laid in bed at night, just to like settled my brain down. And I ended up starting it and finishing on page 63. So I read a total of 386 pages on Wednesday, day one, and I finished one book for the week. So today's mission is going to be continuing in the fine print. I do have a little bit of work I have to do. My son does have a half day and both of them have basketball practice, I believe, tonight. So we are going to be reading around other tasks today, but I'm hoping I have another over 300 page day so that I can finish this book and we can move on to another one. Because I am getting serious FOMO watching everyone update their Goodreads that they are reading Onyx Storm and I'm not. So let's finish this because I think Onyx Storm is incoming.
Even if I try to leave, you still make me wanna stay. You ask me to believe in the words that you say, but I can't be strong if you can't move on. Don't you think we've had enough of the trauma you bring? Ain't you tired of thinking we can get through anything? 'Cause I can't move on if you can't be strong.
Okay, we are back the next day, and I'm pulling up my stats for reading yesterday. It wasn't as successful as the first day, which was Wednesday. Yesterday was Thursday, and I continued with the fine print. I made it from page 63 to page 257. So yesterday I read 194 pages. So day one was 386. Yesterday was 194. It was a little bit of a busier day. And I'm going to be completely honest with you, I just wasn't feeling it. It wasn't like as much of a bingeable day as the first day was. I was busy, I was distracted. Every day is different. And that's one thing that I want you guys to take out of my videos. Like, some days are going to be 500 page days. Some days are going to be 0 page days. Like, it is what it is. And yesterday I just wasn't feeling it as much as I was the day before. So we had a little bit of a decrease, but I want to talk to you guys because I've continued reading this morning. I just didn't have a time to turn on the camera. My son actually has his first high school midterm week, and his schedule's a little erratic this week. Like, today he only went to school from 7 to 9:45, and then I took him for a little treat for finishing up his midterms because it's Friday. So I took him for a little treat to this French bakery in our area. We got like French hot chocolates and croissants and macarons, and it was delicious. So this is the first time I'm getting a chance to turn on the camera, but I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit more about the fine print because I have continued reading today, and I'm now at page 354. I only have, how many pages are in this book? Like less than 100 pages left. I think I have like 75 pages left or 70 pages left to this book. And I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about what it's about. So this essentially is about 3 brothers, Rowan, Declan, and Cal. They are the heirs to Dreamland, which is essentially a thinly veiled euphemism for Disney World. She just couldn't say Disney World. So their grandfather was the owner and founder and CEO of Dreamland, Disney World. And when he passes away in his will, he leaves the park to the 3 brothers, with each of them having a different condition. So Rowan's condition, and this is Rowan's book, Rowan's condition is that he has to basically like modernize and keep the park running efficiently. And he gets it in his head that in order to do that, he needs to modernize the park a bit because it's older. It's just like, imagine like Disneyland, Disney World. So he wants to modernize the park. I forget, I think it's Cal, the brother, that has to like get married and give him an heir before he can claim his part of the park. And I forget what Declan's goal is because they're really like side characters in this. They have their own books if we continue on with the series. But then there's our main female character, Zara, who's working at what is like the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, if you're a Disney person. Like, she works in the little like spa that makes the kids princesses and princes and stuff. And she does hair and makeup and nails and stuff like that for the kids. But her ultimate dream is essentially to become an Imagineer, which in this world is creator. So she wants to design the rides and design the theme parks and design the attractions and the shows. She just hasn't really gotten her foot in the door because when she tried to become an Imagineer the first time, or a creator the first time, the idea was stolen from her in a really, really horrible situation that she was in. So that's her ultimate goal. And it progresses from there. It is very easy to read. It is such simple, awesome writing. There's spice in this that's really well written. The banter is really well written. It's so good. I think that I might really love Lauren Asher's writing. This is not my first Lauren Asher book. I read Throttled, which was like an F1 romance. And while I did really like it, I wasn't quite as into that book because I know next to nothing about F1. I've never watched an F1 race. I don't know. And you don't really need to know much about F1 to read that book, but it wasn't kind of like grasping me and like holding my interest as much as something like Disney World will, because I am a Disney person. Like, I'm a Disney adult. Am I a Disney adult if I bring my kids? I don't really know if that counts, but I would go without them. I have gone without them, so I guess I am. So this whole like Disney World element is right up my alley. I'm loving the banter. I'm loving the smut. It's really, really good. I'm absolutely going to continue out with this series before I even finish it. I know that. And I've seen a bunch of criticism for this book about like not loving Rowan. I don't agree with that. I really, really like him. I think he's really sweet. He's very guarded. He's very defensive, and he's lived a life in the limelight where a lot of people have tried to take advantage of him and have done horrible things to try to like get benefits from him. So he's very like cautious with people. Definitely has his walls up and his defenses up, but I like him. So I'm going to finish this today. Like I said, I think I have like 70 pages left, and we will check back when I'm done. Okay. Next day. We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to talk about any of this because we're just hanging out at home today. We just got back from a basketball game. It's a messy bun, oodie, sweatpants kind of day. We're going to talk about my reading yesterday. And we're just going to move on. We're just going to move on. Okay, so today is Saturday the 25th, but let's talk about my reading yesterday. So yesterday I started the fine print on page 257 and I ended up finishing the book. The book had 440 pages, so I ended up reading a total of 183 pages of the fine print yesterday, which was Friday. And then I decided that it was time. I wasn't going to let myself do what I did with Iron Flame and push it off for a year and totally freak myself out, psych myself out, and intimidate myself. I was going to jump right into Onyx Storm. However, I sat down last night in bed and I started reading it, and I read the prologue and the first chapter and had no clue what was happening. Now, is there a chance that that is on purpose and that we're supposed to start this just a little confused? We're supposed to start Onyx Flame not quite knowing where we're at and what we're doing, and as we read on in the book it will get like kind of figured out. Sure, that is a possibility. But there's also a large possibility that I just do not remember how Iron Flame ended, because if you know anything about me, you know that when I close a book, half the book goes immediately out of my head and I have no clue what I just read. Sometimes I close a book and I think about it like literally 10 seconds later and I could not tell you what the main character's name is. So sometimes that does happen, and it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility that I just don't completely forget what happened in Iron Flame. So I closed the book because I don't want my frustration to taint what I actually think about the book. So the first thing on our agenda today is I'm going to go over to Jared and Lindsay's page on the Real Life Book Reviewer. She does the greatest synopses of books that I've ever read. She has no opinions. It's just she goes chapter by chapter. She always does a shorter version and then a longer extended version that takes you all the way through different books. And she has the one that I listened to for Fourth Wing when I went into Iron Flame because it had been so long between the books. And now she also has one for Iron Flame. I'm going to go and spend the next like half hour listening to Lindsay's recap of the Iron Flame before I jump into Onyx Storm. So that's what we're going to do. And then I'll jump in. That is my plan. Let's see how it goes. But comment below if you've already read Onyx Storm, and if I'm supposed to be confused, if you think that she purposely wrote this so that you didn't really know what was happening in the prologue, or if I'm just forgetting things. I'm not sure. Sometimes that is a stylistic writing choice. I feel like I should start this clip filming today with the meme that's like, hey, how y'all doing? Because that's kind of how I feel this morning, because this video kind of went on the back burner. And remember how I said that my reading is so sporadic based on my schedule and like other things that I have going on. Like there are days where I could read 500 pages and there are days where I could read nothing. This is a classic example of that. So I don't really remember where I left off in our last clip, so let's do like a really quick recap. So Wednesday the 22nd, I read 386 pages total and finished a book. Thursday the 23rd, I read 194 pages. Friday the 24th, I read 183 pages and finished our second book. Then Saturday, my Colorsoft came in the mail, and you guys requested for me to do like a review video and a functionality test, which was not on my filming schedule. I threw it in there. So I put this video on the back burner and this reading challenge on the back burner, and I filmed that for Saturday and Sunday. So for Saturday and Sunday, I read graphic novels, and I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to like count the pages there, because I'm not saying that please, like if you're a graphic novel reader, I'm not saying that graphic novels like count less, quote unquote. However, if we're going to pretend that there's not a difference between the two times that it takes to read a graphic novel as opposed to a novel, there definitely is. I can read a 240 page graphic novel in like 30 minutes. It would take me 3 hours to read the equivalent of that in a regular standard book. So there is a difference. So I did read 3 graphic novels. And those 3 graphic novels totaled 688 pages. But I don't feel like it's honest to this video to pretend that I read 688 pages between Saturday and Sunday, because in a graphic novel, there might be 0 words on one page, just 3 pictures. And that happened quite a bit because I was reading more like middle grade YA graphic novels. So they were so fast. I read all 3 of them in 36 hours. So I don't really know what to do with the page count, but I also don't want to give myself 0 pages. So I think I'm just going to count them as like half pages. So let's go ahead and say over Saturday and Sunday, I read 688 graphic novel pages. Let's count them for like 344 pages. I think that's probably the best way to like stay in theme for this video. I don't know. How do you guys, if you're a graphic novel reader, how do you like log your pages if you do kind of track your pages? That's an interesting conversation to have, because I would feel really weird lying to you guys and telling you, like, intellectually dishonest, I guess I should say, telling you guys that I read 688 pages on Saturday and Sunday, because I didn't. And I don't want to create like unrealistic expectations where like people are like, I didn't read 688 pages this weekend. Like, is that weird? No, I didn't read that. It was a graphic novel marathon. So we're just going to go ahead and say 344 pages-ish. So then yesterday was Monday and I had a very busy day. On top of that, I touched upon this in my Kindle Colorsoft video. It's a mouthful. I ran out of contacts, which was totally my bad. I thought I had extra and I didn't. I usually have like a box each in my travel case, but for whatever reason, I must have used my travel ones and I forgot. So I went to reorder my contacts and they told me that I'm due for an eye exam and I can't reorder my contacts until I get my eye exam, and haha, joke's on you, because the next eye exam isn't until February 6th that we have open. So I now don't have contacts. I've been wearing glasses and they absolutely kill my eyes and make my entire like eye section throb. So currently right now I don't have them on because my face hurts. I have no idea. I'm hoping that this video or this like filming is in focus right now, because I have such bad eyesight. I can't even see my viewfinder right now. I can just kind of see that the light is on. So hopefully. So it's been a little bit of a struggle, and yesterday was a really tough day for me. My entire face was like, I just had such a bad headache and my eyes were throbbing and they're just having a really hard time getting adjusted to my glasses. I do have a really bad astigmatism and really horrible vision. So I feel like I've become like super dependent on my contacts. I don't know if that's a thing, but I literally cannot wait to get them back because my face hurts. So I did read 27 pages of Onyx Storm, and I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about this because I can feel myself mentally doing with Onyx Storm what I did with Iron Flame. So if you're new in this video, you wouldn't know that I gave Fourth Wing, which is the first book in the Empyrean series, 5 stars, 6 stars, infinity stars. It was my favorite book of 2023 at this point. That's crazy. And I loved that book so much that I was so excited when the sequel Iron Flame came out that I overwhelmed myself to the point where I physically was paralyzed with reading it. Like I could not read that book. I loved it so much and almost gave me anxiety. I had anxiety either way. I had anxiety that I was going to love it and then I was going to have to wait a year and a half for the next book to come out. And then I had anxiety on the flip side where I was going to hate it and it was going to ruin Fourth Wing for me. And I just had so much anxiety. I was literally suffering from like Iron Flame paralysis. Like I just could not get myself to read it. And then when I read it, I freaking loved it and was kicking myself for waiting that long. I don't think I loved it as much as Fourth Wing. I think I gave it like a 4.75, not a 5 star, but it was so good. And I find myself right now doing the exact same thing with Onyx Storm. Like I am struggling so hard to get motivated to read this book because I'm so scared. Like I don't even know when book 4 comes out. That's freaking me out if I love it. And if I hate it, like I'm going to be so upset. and I just find myself paralyzed with it. But I'm not going to allow myself to do that. I am going to dedicate today to make progress in Onyx Storm. I have the physical edition right there, but I also have it on Kindle, and then I also went and sprung for the audio. I am that dedicated to make progress today. So we are starting on page 27. Let's see how much progress I can make. Okay, I'm gonna keep it down because my husband worked a double overnight last night, so he is in our bedroom sleeping, and I don't want to disturb him, but I wanted to touch base on something with you really quick, just like a little word of advice from me. If you are like me and you struggle with either motivation, like I was talking about, or scheduling conflicts, or one thing that is not talked about enough, like guilt, whether it be like homemaker guilt, wife guilt, mom guilt, general human guilt, where you feel like reading shouldn't prioritize other things that could be done. So for example, I guess maybe the best way to say it is to describe how I'm feeling right now. There are a multitude of things in this house that should get done right now. There are clean clothes that should be folded and put away and put on our beds. There is currently a clean dishwasher that should be unloaded with like 4 dishes in the sink that should be loaded, okay? I was out of lunchbox snacks, or very dangerously close this morning when I packed Cole's lunchbox. So technically, I should run to Target and go get more lunchbox snacks. So sometimes when I'm feeling like there's a million other things to do in my house, when I go to sit down and read, my brain is just playing all the things that I should be prioritizing over sitting and reading. And if you also struggle with guilt, oh hello Newton, if the camera moves, I'm sorry, we live around Newton in this house, huh? We live around you, and he will not move. So if his tail hits the tripod, I apologize, but if you are like me and you struggle with that guilt of I shouldn't be allowing myself to sit and read with right now when there's like a ton of other things to do, here is my advice to you. You're gonna back into my tripod. He didn't. Good job, bud. Here is my advice to you. I want you to go sit down, light a favorite candle. This one is called Paraffin, a Blazing Wildfire. It's from Page and Wick. Light a candle because I really think that candles calm our minds, like good scents, almost like aromatherapy. Grab a big fluffy blanket and a ton of pillows. Find a really cozy spot in your house with good natural lighting, because for me, when I have nice sunlight, I just feel more calm and I feel more focused. So a place in your house that's cozy with a blanket and pillows, but where sun is present for a little vitamin D. Grab your preferred headphones and put ambient sounds or music. Today I think I'm going to listen to a crackling fireplace with like snow sounds, so like light wind, like snowstorm outside my window with a crackling fireplace, since it's so cold. So if yours is light jazz music or brown noise or rain sounds or ocean waves, put that on in your headphones, preferably noise canceling so that nothing else in your area distracts you. And then take a timer and set a timer, and then allow yourself that time. Anything else that needs to be done can be done after your timer goes off. So I think I'm going to set a 2-hour timer right now, and I'm going to allow myself to just sit for 2 hours and read and not think about all the other things, because all those other things can get done when the 2 hours is done.
So hit me up, you know it's all I'm waiting for. Oh, would you hit me up? I've been waiting my whole life, oh, for you to hit me up. I've never felt this way. I wanna turn back time, save me some heartbreak.
second because I am like 80 pages in, like 10% of the way through Onyx Storm. And I didn't read Iron Flame that long ago. And I watched a recap video of it. So I was feeling pretty confident that I remembered enough about what happened pretty clearly going into Onyx Storm. But there are so many characters talked about in just the first few chapters. I mean, I'm looking at this and I can count, I'm not even exaggerating, literally 40 that we've already discussed. And I remember like the main 4. The rest of them, I'm sitting there being like, who? What? When? Where? How? Why? Like, I'm just so, I'm not really lost. I wouldn't say I'm lost. But right now, I'm reading simply like purely for the vibes, you know what I'm saying? Like, I got to the point where I'm done Googling everything I don't understand. That happened like 15 pages in. And now, 80 pages in, I'm just like, maybe it'll be explained later. And if not, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, you know? So, I just don't remember there being this many characters. And by the way, am I the only one who reads Llewellyn as a girl every time? And then it throws me off when it's a guy. I always read Llewellyn as a girl, but it's not. Llewellyn's a guy, so there's that. Keeping track of all the characters and their dragons, and whether they're a rider or a flyer, and the different countries, and the different squadrons and quadrants is overwhelming, but the writing is fantastic. Okay. I'm going to turn my timer and my music back on, or not music, ambiance back on, and continue vibing.
For me, if I let you in, so secretly, yeah, my melody, yeah, my melody. Will you stay with me if I let you in? I just like the way you are, yeah. All the ways you blow my mind, yeah. People always told me I need someone like
Good morning. Okay, next morning, we have our stats. I am still making my way through Onyx Storm, and I literally cannot wait to talk to you guys about this because I have about 1.5 billion thoughts right now. But let's talk about our stats first. So I started yesterday on page 27 of Onyx Storm. I had just barely started it after my little deviation to graphic novels over the weekend, and I ended on page 234. So I read 207 pages of Iron Storm yesterday. And if you know anything about this book, don't look at the actual, but like the tiniest little writing ever. I just feel like each page takes me so long to get through. So I just feel like I'm flipping the pages a lot slower. And I've been going back and forth. I've been listening on audio. I've been reading on my Kindle at night in bed. I like picking up the actual hardcover when I'm just sitting on the couch. So I have so many thoughts about this book because I woke up this morning. What did I say? I ended on 234. Yeah, I woke up this morning and I did read a little bit, and now I'm on page 334. Oh, that's convenient. So I read about 100 pages so far this morning, and I'm just like, I'm so interested on what's going on. So, okay, in fairness, I want to make sure that I give a little bit of a caveat to the Empyrean series in general, because I am not saying that this is on the same emotional and mental depth and level to me as the Harry Potter series is, because that is a canon event in my life, the Harry Potter series. But I feel similarly to the Empyrean series as I do to Harry Potter, in that I have become so attached to the main characters of this series that it's similar to how I feel about Harry, Ron, Hermione, Sirius, Dumbledore, Snape, like similarly to how I felt about them 3 books in. Like by the time I got to Prisoner of Azkaban, I was so entrenched in their world and that story, and I was so attached to those characters. And I feel very similarly to this book and to this series as I do about that. I don't know if I'm doing a great job explaining that, but like Harry Potter got to the point where J.K. Rowling could release a book tomorrow in the Harry Potter series. I don't need to know anything about it. I'm going to read it. It's going to be 5 stars and I'm going to be obsessed with it. Just to be back in that world and just to be back hanging out with those characters and just to know what's going on in their life. Any movie, any series, any book, any novella, anything, Harry Potter, I will eat up and love. It doesn't even have to be a traditionally fantastic book. I will just love it because I love that world and those characters. And they are, as corny as it sounds, it's like they're family to me. You feel like you're reading about family. I am feeling very similarly about the Empyrean. I am so obsessed and so emotionally invested in these characters that I just kind of like, I leave my brain and I just vibe out when I'm reading these books, right? So Fourth Wing was a 5-star. I think I gave Iron Flame like a 4.75. This, I'm not even going to say like what I think my rating is yet, but this, I can see why it's getting a bit of criticism, okay? If you don't feel that same emotional attachment as I am, this book is kind of following the almost like, it's definitely a romantasy. We've had a good amount of spice and like, there's definitely a romance like at the center of the story. And I have to be careful about how I talk about this because it is the 3rd book and I obviously no spoilers. So there is a romance at the center of the story, but Onyx Storm in particular is taking a much more epic adventure, high fantasy path than the other 2 books have. So if you don't know anything about Fourth Wing, the literal like 2-sentence description is our main female character, Violet, attends a war college, Basgiath, becomes a dragon rider, and the story is kind of ensuing from there. Well, by the time we've gotten to Onyx Storm, they are currently searching for something or searching to prove the existence of something, I guess I'll say. And it's taking, the reason why it's kind of reminding me of like an epic fantasy is it's taking that kind of like that storyline plot of we're looking for something, we're going to go on an adventure to potentially find it. So we go to this place, we fight, it's not there. We go to this place, we fight, it's not there. We travel to a new place looking for it, we fight, it's not there. So we go to the next place. And it is kind of taking on that meandering adventure plot. Now, I'm not saying stuff doesn't happen like in between, and I'm not saying that there's not like character tropes and character subplots going on while you're adventuring and while you get to these places, because there definitely is. However, in a lot of epic high fantasy books that I've read, that bores me. I just don't care. But because I am so invested in these characters, I could read 1,000 pages of this in this book. I am literally just like, I leave my body, I leave my brain, and I just like vibe out and listen. And we get to that place and they fight and then they're moving to the next place and I'm like, let's see what happens. Like, I'm not bored, but I think that is solely because I'm so in love with this world. If you don't echo that opinion and you're not in love with the world and you're not in love with the characters, I could see how this could be a total slog. Like, I could see how you would just be like, I don't care, get to the point. I am not feeling that way. I am loving this 300 and what did I say, 34 pages in. According to Goodreads, I think that's like 60% of the way through. It looks a lot farther in the book, but I think that's like 60% of the way through, I'm pretty sure. I am hoping to finish this today, but these pages take forever to read. I think there's like 570 pages, so that would be reading another 235 pages when I've already read 100 pages today. That is a challenge, but we are going to continue reading in Onyx Storm and I will check back later. I'm processing. I'm processing, I'm thinking. This is what happens every time I finish an Empyrean book. Like, the Empyrean series is the only series from Rebecca Yarros that I have read. I have her contemporary romances, but I haven't read them. And every time I close an Empyrean book, I need like 3 to 5 business days to process, I feel like. Okay. That's where we're going. All right. That's where we're going. Let me pull myself together and let's talk about it. Okay, like I just said, I did just finish Onyx Storm. I literally closed the book about 30 minutes ago, and I've spent the last 30 minutes thinking, brainstorming, processing, thinking, thinking. Overall, I'm giving this book a 4.25 stars. This book has been the lowest rated book in the Empyrean series for me, but I'm going to be totally honest with you. I could be persuaded to go up. I wouldn't go down. 4.25 is my lowest rating for sure, because I really enjoyed it, and it's the Empyrean series. Like, even I could read like an entire book just about like the characters themselves with hardly any plot and be fine with it. But there were things in this book that I didn't love. So I think I already touched upon it when I talked about it briefly yesterday, but this book is very repetitive. And if you don't love the characters and love the world and love the story, I don't think you're going to love the format that this book takes. It's very repetitive. It's also much more like high fantasy, right? So a lot more political fantasy, a lot more world building, very immersive, very good world building, but a lot of world building. You're kind of thrown into these characters. The other thing I noticed is that in this book, we're using a lot of characters like nicknames or even referring to them by their last names, which we hadn't really done much of previously. So I would find myself confused when they would be like, "Oh, Hollis, get over here." And I'd be like, "Hollis? Who is Hollis?" If you find yourself confused, if you're reading it physically, which I wasn't, which probably added to the confusion, I read it mostly on my Kindle, which it's not as easy to flip back in your Kindle. But if you have a physical copy on hand, right at the beginning of the book, after the map, you have a character key, okay? And this key gives you their first and last names, their dragons that they're bonded to, or the griffins that they're bonded to, and what their signet, which is like their special ability, what their signet is. It also gives you, it lays out who the leaders of each world are. So if you find yourself getting confused or they refer to somebody by a name you haven't heard of, it might be a nickname or even a last name, and you can flip here, because I did, and I was like, oh, Hollis is Quinn, for Quinn Hollis, okay? So it did get a little confusing that she was kind of using these names and these acronyms and these nicknames for people in a way that hasn't really been done much before. So as the reader, it was kind of your job to figure out who these people were and what leaders of what worlds they are. And in this book, we did work side by side with other kingdoms, and she was talking about rulers that haven't really played into the story yet. So keeping that straight got a bit tedious, but if you can put in the work, this is, I guess what I'm saying is this is a book that you can't really turn on and like zone out. Like, you can vibe, but you have to be very aware of who you're talking about, from what world, what dragon they're bonded to, what their signet is. Like, you have to be very locked in to really understand and absorb what's going on. And I liked it. The romance did take much more of a center stage in this one than it did in the other ones, which I like. And I feel like that was in response to a lot of readers' asks, because I know in Iron Flame people were a little upset that there wasn't more romance, but this is more fantasy with a romance subplot. I mean, it's a romantasy, don't get me wrong, but there's a difference. Some romantasy is very romance forward and the fantasy and the world building takes a backseat. This is more, in this particular book, I think the fantasy and the world building and the war politics took front seat, and the romance kind of sat in the back. But it was still there, and you did still see it. And there was some very, very, very good spice in this book. So overall, I really liked it. I think I'm just processing my feelings. And also the ending, I'm really conflicted about, like the huge plot twist at the end. I don't know. I'm going to need the next book to see truly how I feel about it, because if it's not developed right in the next book, I think it's kind of going to be a cop-out, or kind of just for like the shock value, because it didn't come out of nowhere. They talk about it throughout the book, but it did kind of like, it was thrown in like the last 4 pages and you were just kind of like, wait, what? Why? What? Really? That's what they did? They're in the middle of a war and that's what they did? But I get it. So like I said, overall, of the 3 books in the Empyrean series, Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, and now Onyx Storm, this has been my lowest rating, but it's still a 4.25 and it was still amazing. And I don't know how I'm going to wait a year and a half for the next book to come out. That seems criminal, and I need to know what happens. And I need to know if I like the ending. There is no possible way for me to tell you guys if I liked the ending or not if I don't know what direction the ending is going to moving forward. Right now, I'm very neutral on it. It's all going to depend on the next book. So with that being said, we are going to end the challenge here, but let's talk with a little bit of like a recap of the last week. So here's the stats. This week, I finished 3 books and 3 graphic novels. If we just look at the book's total pages, I finished 1,317 total pages. If we're counting the graphic novels at 1/2 pages, like I said earlier in this video, I would feel kind of disingenuous counting them as full pages because some pages literally don't even have words on them. So it's not quite the same. So if we're counting the graphic novels at 1/2 pages, I finished 1,661 pages. So let's go over the books I did finish really quickly and their ratings. The first book I finished was Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, and I gave this a 2.25 stars. And honestly, we have 1 book left to finishing her total works, which is the sequel to this, Muse of Nightmares. But I think this book really solidified the fact that I think Laini Taylor's writing and like her storytelling is just not for me. I then picked up The Fine Print. I gave this 4 stars. Quick, easy, good romance, loved the dreamland element. The main male character didn't bother me like he bothered other people, so this was solid and I'm definitely continuing. Then we went into my graphic novel weekend. First, I picked up Garlic and the Vampire by Brie Paulson, and I gave this a 3.75 stars. We are not going to talk about this too much. I talked about it in my Kindle Colorsop video that's up on my channel, and it'll be linked below as well. I gave this a 3.75 stars, and it was very cute. Cute little middle grade graphic novel where all of your main characters are vegetables, and there happens to be a witch and a vampire. I also picked up Heartstopper Volume 1 and I gave this a 3.5 stars. This was very cute as well. I really loved it. I didn't feel like the immediate connection to Nick and Charlie like a lot of people do when they read this book. It was very cute. It was very good. I wasn't as in love with the art style. I thought that Garlic and the Vampire's art style was much better to my personal preference, but adorable. Will I continue? Probably, but I don't know that I'm going to like prioritize it. And then I also picked up Sheets by Brianna Thumler, and I gave this a 2-star. There wasn't really anything necessarily wrong about this book. I just found it kind of depressing. The art style was really nice. It was really vibrant colors. It looked great on my Coloursoft, but yeah, just wasn't for me. And then, of course, the piece de resistance, Onyx Storm, and I gave this a 4.25 stars. I don't know, guys. It's been, like 10 minutes since I started talking about this, and the more I'm reflecting on this, I think I'm liking it more. Is it a 4.5 star? No, I'm not going to second guess myself. I'm going to keep it at a 4.25, but don't be surprised if you see my rating on Goodreads go up within the next couple of days once I've thought about it. And by the way, obviously comment down below with anything that you think, but also if you want to have like a more spoilery conversation or like go more into depth, like my DMs on Instagram are always open. Like, please, my Instagram is linked below in the description. Find me, friend me, subscribe to me, message me. Let's have a spoilery talk about this because I could be convinced to go up, I think. So there you have it, guys. Over 1,600 pages read, 3 books finished, plus 3 graphic novels. I think that was a pretty solid week of reading. I'm pretty happy with that. What do you guys think? What was your favorite of these 3 books if you've read them, or what was your least favorite? Because we like to get a little spicy around here. You know what I'm saying? Tell me what you didn't like. And then if you've made it this whole way, comment the butterfly emoji for the beautiful butterfly. It's actually a moth, but let's not get technical. The beautiful moth on the cover of Strange the Dreamer. And then do all the things that you guys are so good at doing. Like, comment, subscribe. And I will catch you in the next one. Stay warm. Bye, guys.